So we've come to that part of the camping season where people in the north are a little sad, Patty, because
they're having to winterize their trailers.
Yeah. And so today we have invited in our friend who just also happens to be the editor, producer
Mr. Jim
of the podcast, Jim Kuzman. So Jim, welcome to Travels with Delaney, the podcast.
Thank you. It feels weird to be on this side of things.
I bet.
It was about a little over a year ago you were on the podcast, so this is your return visit.
Yeah, it took you that long to run through like qualified, legitimate guests and come back here again.
That's right. No. So, wow. See, I'm caught off guard because Jim being the producer of the show, I feel I'm under a little pressure tonight.
A little stress.
Yeah, that's right. So for those of you that don't know, not only is Jim our friend and edits all these podcasts for us, but he is an RVer himself.
He is.
Jim, how long have you actually been RVing?
Just about 4 years. So relatively new, but long enough to have made a lot of mistakes, many of which involved winterization.
Yeah. So do you winterize your RV then?
We do.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And so that's kind of why we wanted to bring you in, because Patty and I, we do sometimes winterize.
It's like partial, isn't it?
Yeah, we're kind of weird. We're the weird people in the north that we use our RV. We try to use it all 12 months.
Yeah, we do.
And so we will winterize if we're absolutely forced to.
Right, when that weather turns uber cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we haven't done like a winterization to where we, do all the steps and then put it away and forget about it.
A long time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's why we thought we'd bring you in, because unfortunately you will be probably thinking about it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and this is the third. Today is the 30-year anniversary. It's our Landsversary since we bought our Lance 2285, and we stored it home in the driveway, but it's outdoors. I do keep a small little space heater, little ceramic heater going all the time in there, so really things don't really freeze inside because I don't want to bring like soap, shampoos, that I don't want to haul that stuff in over the winter time. So it's it stays in the 40s most of the time at the very least. But I still winterize it.
Sure. Yeah, and some people will go to the extent of not only just winterizing, but like they'll actually unplug the trailer, or maybe they're having to store it someplace. I always feel fortunate. I don't know about you, Jim, but I always feel fortunate now that we own a place where we're allowed to keep our RV right there at the house.
Used to not be that way.
We keep ours at the house right in the driveway, and I don't have full 30 amp service in yet. That's on the roadmap, but I've got a 20 amp circuit, so I can leave it plugged in and run the space heater, the fridge if I want to, and and that way I always keep it plugged in, so we don't have to do anything with the batteries or anything like that.
And you're not covering your RV or anything like that. Yeah.
No, and we camp year round too. Providing that the roads aren't really icy or salty, or we can get out of the driveway. Like year before last, when we had the big a year ago February, we had that big snow that lasted for like 6 months, it seemed. There was so much snow in front of the camper, and I had plowed the driveway, and the driveway just kept getting narrower and narrower, and couldn't even get it out, or certainly wouldn't have gotten it back in. But other than that, we don't let the cold stop us. It's a 4-season camper, so we de-winterize, fill the tank with water, hit the road. Everything stays fine while we're camping, and we dump and re-winterize before we leave the campground. And
yeah, I think a lot of people, when they hear winterization, they think it's a really big process.
Right, complicated.
Yeah, and we were kind of that way when we first started RVing, 18 years ago?
Right.
I mean, we were paying the local RV dealership to winterize, and after a couple of years of doing that, I started hearing how easy the process actually was, and realized I could do this myself for a fraction of the cost.
Yeah, it's 2 gallons for our camper. It's I allow for 2 gallons of antifreeze, which is $5 or $6, and about 15 minutes of time. And it doesn't, I used to think, well, great, I have this 4-season camper, we can go, but do I have to unwinterize the thing every time I want to use it? Do I have to re-winterize? And it sounded like this, why would you bother with that just to go camping for a weekend? And with this camper in particular, and I know your Lance was like this, it's just really easy.
Very simple, yeah. And I will say, before we dive into some of this, some of you may be saying, what do you mean by winterization? And I think there's a couple ways you could look at winterization. I think there's like a complete winterization where it's not just worrying about your water systems, but it's things like, removing anything that might attract rodents. And some people will put like dryer sheets down, or they'll put mothballs under their RV. Some people will cover their RV.
Well, we used to even remember, Hun, all of like the sheets and towels and stuff in the house.
Yeah, we just take everything out if we were going to shut it down for the winter. But what we want to on this podcast is really, we're going to focus, when we talk about winterization, we're really specifically going to talk about the water systems.
Right.
Yeah. Because again, both of us are using our RVs at times throughout the winter.
Right.
And so.
And we use ours. I mean, I'll go out and take a nap, go out and read for some peace and quiet, put the TV on. So, we're out in it a couple of times a week, even if it's in the driveway. So.
Yep. I like to use it as, an office sometimes and
absolutely
just go out there and work. So, so when you're talking about water systems, we're talking really about your freshwater tank, your black tank, and your gray or grays, depending on your RV's configuration, and all the lines that run between them. And so the real concern is, you've been using your RV all summer, and so there is still going to be residual water in those lines,
right?
And in the water heater,
right?
Yep.
And so once the temperature starts dropping below 32 degrees, then we have to worry about that water freezing. Now, I think a lot of people, Jim, will say, the new trailers, they're made with PEX, and PEXs, can expand to some ridiculous amount.
Yeah.
But why is it that even if you have PEX on your trailer, we still can't allow there to be water in there and freeze?
Right. The PEX isn't the concern, because it will expand. That's not an issue. It's made to take a lot more pressure than you would ever put in the course of normal use. But what isn't made to take that are the little plastic fittings, like the little T's and little connectors that connect the PEX, the fixtures, like at the base of the toilet where the valve is, or underneath the sink, or inside the fixtures. Well, like a lot of home fixtures, less so these days as things get cheaper and cheaper, but most of them are not metal inside, they're plastic inside. Right. So the little cartridge and the water passages and everything that are in the spigot and the tap are plastic, and they're very, very tiny and very brittle. And if you get just a little bit of water in there, that water expands when it freezes, cracks the inside of the fixture or cracks the fitting. Yep. You hope that it's somewhere, if it does crack, that you can get to it and replace it, and you can see the water coming out in the springtime. Right. But there are a lot of places where, those couplers and fittings and are behind walls, under the floor. They can be in places where you can't see them, and that's not where you want to leak. So it's that ice expanding inside those little plastic pieces that's really the issue.
Yeah, so it's not the PEX that's going to get you, Patty. It's the plastic fittings.
Man, this is out of my wheelhouse.
Is it?
We're not talking shoes anymore.
We actually had an issue one time where somebody was supposed to have winterized that was not named Patrick or Patty.
Yeah.
We won't get into who it was, but and when we got our trailer back from service, they had not winterized.
Nope.
And the reason I found that was we picked it up and we're headed to Florida for Christmas, and it only took like 30 seconds to fill the fresh water tank. And I'm like, And so I went inside the trailer and I took like 2 steps, and all of a sudden I heard thud. And what it was is I had put some water obviously into the fresh tank, and that had loosened up the block of ice that had frozen. And it had come to the surface. Now, once we were able to get the trailer heated up and thawed out all the lines,
then we were okay.
Well, we had one small issue.
Yeah.
There was a crack on a water valve that we found and was easy to replace, but we got very lucky.
Yep.
So even the fresh tank handled that block of ice. It expanded, but there was enough room for it apparently to expand up as opposed to out. But there was just enough water, and I think it was near a mixing valve where, again, it's always the plastic that gets you. The mixing valve was brass, but they had attached it with a plastic fitting, and that's where it had cracked. And like I said, it was a place that we could easily see. It was a very small leak, and we were able to take the trip and get by till we could get a new part. But I mean, even us, we've been doing this for 18 years. You know, accidents happen, and
they do.
Things break, but we got pretty lucky. So let's talk about ways you could winterize then. So the goal is we've got to get the water out of the system. And I guess the one thing we didn't mention was drain that hot water heater.
Yeah, start with the hot water heater and drain it, because that's, I mean, most water heaters hold 6 gallons of water. And you could probably, I mean, it's a metal tank in most cases, so it could probably take a little expansion, but you don't want that block of ice sitting in the water heater all year. So start by draining that.
And I actually know somebody who one time thought their water heater had been bypassed and drained, and it hadn't, and it actually had expanded over the winter, and they ended up with a cracked hot water tank. So it can, you know, now maybe they were unlucky, but you just don't even want to risk that. So I wanted to mention that as we're talking about, you know, that's an area you do not want to forget about. So
start there, and that means pulling the, you know, and the drain plugs are always hard to get to, right? Because like the tube for the burner is always right in front of it. You know, they're kind of a pain to get out, and sometimes it's an extension on a socket, and you know, it depends on the water heater, the model, and the brand and all. But yeah, that's got to come out.
Wouldn't you think somebody at the water heater company would say, like, hey, maybe we ought to move this part so you could actually get to that part easily, or maybe they get a good chuckle watching us RVers try to remove the plugs.
That's probably it.
So
yeah, I take the drain plug out and then just open the little pressure relief valve, you know, to kind of get some air flowing through there, and then just, you know, and if the heater's been running, let it cool down so you don't scald yourself, but open that up, and that's where you start is draining that. And then once it's drained, I don't know if all RVs have this, but most of them do. They've got a bypass valve on them.
Right.
And what the bypass valve does is disconnects the water fill or the water pump from the rest of the lines. So in essence, you're not filling the water heater with water or 6 gallons of antifreeze, because you don't need antifreeze in the water heater.
Right.
In some cases, you definitely don't want it in the water heater. If you have an Alta system, they recommend that you don't put antifreeze in the water heater. So yeah, bypass valve. And if your RV doesn't have one, they sell kits. I think Camco makes it.
Yeah.
You just put a little T in there.
I think most RVs today are, you know, they're coming pretty standard with things like the bypass valve. And I think most of them now are doing the right at the pump where you can, you know, just do a quick valve switch. And then as opposed to the pump sucking from your fresh tank, there's a hose right there. You just stick that in your jug.
Right.
I know years ago when we started doing our winterization, we didn't have that. So I would have to go buy 5 gallons. And really the only reason we didn't really need 5 gallons, you just needed that much to get in the fresh tank so you could get that suction.
Right.
And so it was just a waste of pink. And then, you know, come spring, then you're really having to clean out that fresh tank.
Yep.
So
but I think most of them have the siphon pickup now, or if you have like the Nautilus system, and you just do the little, you know, it's like Garanimals for plumbing. You just point them all to the giraffe, and if you want to do this, and you know, they make it super easy.
It's so easy a child could do it, and yet this summer I screwed
it
up.
Yes.
Yeah. Because what I found with the Nautilus, this is our first Nautilus system. Is that you really have to make sure those valves are completely like down or up, and I had one that wasn't all the way. And I don't remember what the issue was. I think we thought the pump wasn't working.
Well, it was really loud or something was going on.
So I'm like, wow, so simple a child could do it. And yet
Yep. Here we are.
Here we are. So, well, now they're actually, so draining is always the first thing. Drain the water tank, open what we call the low point valves. Most RVs, they're fairly easy to spot. If you crawl under your trailer, you should see usually two, I think, maybe three valves that you open up. Drain your fresh tank. But even by draining the system, that's not really going to get us to where we need to be, right?
Right. So we've still got water in there somewhere in places that, where it's, just draining them is not going to get it all out. So you've got two choices at that point. You can either push compressed air in to force the water out. So you open up all the faucets, you open up the low point drains, and then they sell a little fitting that goes onto the freshwater, not the freshwater tank fill, but like the municipal water fill. Like if you were hooking a hose up at a full service site, it'll screw onto there, and then it has the other end. We'll take a fitting from like a compressor, and I forget what the PSI is. You don't need much.
No,
it's you're not trying to blow the system apart, but probably 15 or 20 pounds, I would guess, pushes enough in there, and that forces all of the air out. And that's how commercial properties, golf courses in the northern climate, winterize their sprinkler system, because they're not putting thousands of gallons of antifreeze in there. They just want to get the water out of the sprinkler heads, and that's the goal here, is just to get all the water out of the fixtures.
And even if just a small amount is left, the fact that you've blown out the vast majority, you're going to be fine.
Right.
So that's one of the methods, which we have done before.
Yeah, I think, wasn't it our friend Mike showed you that when we were at another campground we stayed at? Yeah.
Yeah. I did that one year, and we didn't have any issues. I think I was nervous all winter.
Right.
You get so used to one method.
Yeah.
And that when you try something new and you're thinking, what if I didn't get it all out? What if,
So, I did it one time, but it involved like getting the compressor out of the garage, and then you got to find the extension cord, you plug it in, and then and it took longer. And the only difference was that I didn't have to spend, whatever the antifreeze is, $2.50 a gallon, maybe, depending on where you get it on sale. So you save a couple of bucks, but I don't know. I found it less convenient actually than doing the RV antifreeze.
Yeah, and the RV antifreeze to me is so simple anymore. Yeah, which is method number 2.
Yep. So in that one, once you get the low point drains drained, and your fresh tank emptied, and for me, I also sanitize the tanks once at the end of the year. I suppose you don't have to, but I do. Just to kind of start the year clean in the spring. So once you get all that done, then it's your water heater's already bypassed if you remember to do that. And you'll know if you didn't, because you start going through an awful lot of antifreeze before it comes out of the faucet. But then it's just a matter of hooking up the little siphon, dropping the siphon hose from the water pump and flipping the valve there. And again, if your camper doesn't have that, that's a real easy. It's a little T with a valve on it, and you can buy those kits aftermarket too for a few bucks. And
I think Camco makes one actually. I think that's what I had to do with our Tab 400. I actually bought the little kit.
And that stays permanently in the camper. That's a one and done.
Yep.
And then you take the little siphon hose, you stick it down into the bottom of the jug of antifreeze, and with the faucets closed, you turn on the water pump. And what that little valve is doing is, instead of drawing water up from the intake on the fresh water tank, it's now siphoning from the jug of antifreeze. So you've removed the fresh water tank from the plumbing at this point. And you're sucking the antifreeze out of the jug. And ours takes about probably half a gallon, 3/4 of a gallon to fill and pressurize all the lines. And once the pump stops cycling, when it's pressurized, then you start going around and opening up all of the hot and cold water lines one at a time. I start on the outside, so you don't forget. Start with the outdoor shower, outdoor kitchen, if you've got a kitchen outdoors, and you want to open the cold water side and the hot water side separately. So because they're being fed from different sources and different pipes. So you open up the cold water and you wait until the antifreeze runs dark pink out of the tap, turn it off, switch to the hot side, do the same there. You'll see the water go from clear to a light pink to a dark pink. Once it's a nice dark pink, turn that off, and you move to the next fixture. And you do that with the kitchen sink, the bathroom sink, the shower, the toilet. Don't forget the toilet.
Yep.
And once all that's done, you're pretty much done. Now, you're probably going to have to switch jugs at some point because it's going to take more than a gallon. So once that first jug empties, be ready to switch to the second jug, turn the pump off, swap them out, and go and finish the rest of the fixtures. And then turn the water pump off and take a little bit of the pink antifreeze that you've got left in the jug and kind of slowly pour it into each of the drains. And that helps fill the P-trap at the bottom, and so that doesn't freeze, and you're done.
Yeah. And one tip I will throw in is if you're over, let's say in the bathroom, and your jug runs out and you lose prime on your pump, because antifreeze can be a little harder to get prime with than straight water. So real simple, take that hose and just pour a little of that antifreeze, hold the hose up, pour a little in, then flip your pump back on and be ready to stick it in. Yep. That will push enough in. I did a short on that about a year ago. That thing has thousands of views, and I've had so many comments from people saying, thank you so much. We couldn't get our water pump to pick up. And your little tip, and it's it's most of the time you won't have an issue when it's going from the fresh tank with just water. Usually you won't lose prime that way. It usually occurs when people are trying to winterize and their jug runs out, and then there gets air in the line.
Yeah, and you've got a higher lift from the jug over to the pump in some cases too, especially if you've got the jug off the floor. So the pump now has to lift it as well.
With our Lance, it was a 1985, a little bit smaller than yours, but not a lot smaller. 2 gallons would do us.
Yes.
It usually took a gallon and a half, and I usually have a half a gallon roughly or a third of a gallon left, and that was plenty for those traps.
That's exactly what ours takes.
And that's why I'm kind of like you, Jim. We will winterize, de-winterize multiple times during the winter. Because it's just so simple to do.
And if you don't count like draining the water heater, because you have to, it takes a couple of minutes for that to empty. But once that's empty, it's like 10 minutes. It doesn't take any time at all.
No. And depending on how you winter camp, and I guess that's a whole separate episode. But you may not. I mean, we went winter camping before where we don't even de-winterize. You can still use your toilet. We just bring jug water to flush with. But your water system is still intact. And when you go to those posh campgrounds like Evergreen over in Ohio that have
very posh,
their bathrooms are nicer than the one in our house.
Bougie.
It's bougie.
Now you call it bougie.
So, but even if you want to use your shower, it's just not that hard to winterize. And again, like you said, Jim, you're talking maybe $5-6 for a couple of jugs. The bigger the RV, obviously, it might take a little more.
Right.
I'll be curious.
We're curious what this one does.
Yeah, we haven't winterized the Alliance yet, so it'll be interesting to see. Will 2 jugs still do it, or will we have to? I know it would not take more than a third jug. It's not that big of a fifth wheel. But somebody, if somebody has like a 41-foot fifth wheel, like Bobby and April, our friends from Travels Abound, I'm guessing that RV, just because of the sheer length,
you've got a lot more lines to
fill. Yeah. So that could vary.
Right.
But as long as you can go out, you can keep it winterized. And if you've gone to a place where they keep a shower house and facilities open all year, then as long as you're okay using those and not showering and using water in your camper, just keep it winterized. Really, the only reason to de-winterize is if you have heated tanks and you want to use your fresh water.
Right. So it's super simple and. I think it's one of those things where around here, I believe dealers are charging about $90 to winterize. And when you think about the fact that $5-6 for the antifreeze, say you got to get 3, $10. And key is just, I think it's a good idea. Make a checklist so that the first time you do it, because it seems like the one that everybody, if you're going to forget to do something, it's going to be that outdoor shower or outdoor kitchen. You get so focused inside on the bathroom, the toilet, and then you forget that, there's running water outside that we're going to have to winterize.
And RVs are plumbed in funny ways. The plumbing, between like the pump and the water heater and the shower and everything, you can, I think in Lance's case, I think they'll actually send you like a schematic of the plumbing if you ask them to, if you write and ask them. But really, you don't know what's going on under there, and things are not necessarily in the order you think they are. And so you'll forget to do the outdoor shower, and all of a sudden, your shower's working fine in the bathroom, but you can't get water at the kitchen sink.
Right.
That happened to us the first year that we camped with the Lance at Evergreen, and it was the outdoor shower. And it wasn't that I forgot to winterize it, but we had de-winterized, and that little plastic box was in an uninsulated cabinet, and just having it in, just having those lines cold enough, even though there was no water running through the shower, just having those lines cold enough was enough to freeze the cold water going to the bathroom sink.
And just kind of backs up into the trailer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you ever used vodka as opposed to pink fluid?
I've used vodka after making mistakes.
Okay, but not for actual
winterizing, but not actually. Okay. No, because I don't think you save any money.
I don't think you do. I mean, I know Kirkland's vodka is pretty good and it's well priced, but yeah, I don't know. But and the reason I bring that up is Patty remembers.
Oh, I know.
Mandy Lee
yes.
And Kendrick
had talking about
and I don't know if they still do it, but they used to winterize their tab with vodka. And then their theory was when they de-winterized, they had a nice beverage.
Yeah.
Right. You just open the tap and you've got a bottle
right there.
We definitely are not recommending you use vodka to winterize your RV.
No.
But you mentioned the tab, and a question that because if you follow the forums and the Facebook groups and everything for the campers this time of year, everybody's asking about winterization, and the same questions kind of come up because people are doing this for the first time every year, right? It's new for somebody.
Yep.
And with the tabs have the Alta system, which is a single boiler that makes your domestic hot water and also heats a loop of glycol that circulates through radiators, and it's a radiant heat. And people will often ask, well, if I winterize the system, can I still use my heater? And the answer is yes. It's a separate circuit. So yeah, if you've got a tab or you've got a camper that has the Aldi system, the answer is yes. They don't
run your heater.
Yeah, you can still run your heater. They're separate systems.
Yep. All right. Well, this has been really informative. Hopefully this helps some of you out if you're thinking about winterizing your RV and wondering what it might be like. Now, we're not experts on this. We're just sharing our thoughts on what we do and what Jim does. But yeah, any final thoughts, Jim?
I would say it sounds intimidating because it's plumbing, right? And everybody says, oh, things are going to go wrong here. The faucet's going to blow off the sink in the spring and the tank will fall off. Yeah, things can go wrong if you get it wrong, but it's really not that hard to do. So I would say if you're even marginally handy and you follow the steps, and every manufacturer has this outlined, in the manual, and there's plenty of YouTube videos and plenty of websites that will help you do this. Watch some of those, do a little research, but it is not as hard as people think, and I would not be intimidated by the process. It sounds worse than it is, but it's very simple.
Absolutely. Well, this is usually the point, Patty, in the show where we say we need to send a big thank you to our friend and producer, but he's already here. So, but we say thank you anyway, Jim.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
You have to make yourself sound good this week.
And now I'm very sympathetic to can you make us look good? Because this is
see.
Yeah, I got to start that. That's a project I got to start at home.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you taking time out of your day to come and kind of talk everybody through this process. And
I've learned a lot.
You have. Good. Maybe I'll put you in charge of winterizing.
You're ready for the Alliance, Patty.
I don't think so, Tim. I'll stick with the shoes.
All right. Well, thank you so much to everyone. If you've made it this far on the podcast, if you get a chance and you can hop online, wherever you're listening to this podcast, if you can rate it and drop a comment.
Absolutely.
And it really helps us with those podcast platforms.
Yes, it does.
And until next time, everybody, we'll see you
on down the road.
Bye.
Bye.
Travels with the lady. We'll see you on down the road.